The wind tore across Dustwater Creek like a living thing, carrying the scent of dust, horse sweat, and distant fires from the hills. The wooden boardwalks creaked beneath boots that had traveled far, each step echoing survival in a town built from grit and desperation. At the edge of the square, a young woman stood rigid, clutching a small leather satchel to her chest. Lila Calhoun, daughter of the town's sheriff, had never known fear like this. Her father upheld law and order, but the frontier did not care for laws. Danger could strike anywhere, and today it had. Across the street, a shadow moved against the amber haze of the late afternoon sun. A man on horseback, tall and imposing, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The townsfolk whispered his name in fear and awe. Cole Blackwood, an outlaw whose deeds were as legendary as his silence. Some said he was ruthless. Others spoke of a code no one truly understood. Lila's heart pounded as she watched him, unsure whether to hope or tremble. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered to herself, but the wind carried her words to him anyway. Cole dismounted quietly. His eyes scanned the street, sharp and deliberate. He noticed the figures moving in the shadows at the far end. Pike's gang, notorious for taking what wasn't theirs and leaving ruin in their wake. Lila's pulse quickened. Earlier that morning, the gang had struck while she fetched water for her father. Their leader had singled her out, seeing in her a witness, a threat, or simply an opportunity to assert power. Either way, she was in danger. Cole's voice, low and steady, broke the tension. "Step back from a boardwalk." His words carried authority, not from law, but from a certainty born of survival. Her knees shook. Who are you?" she asked. "Someone who can get you out alive," he replied. "But you'll have to trust me." Her instincts screamed to refuse, to run. But something in his eyes, calm, calculating, yet faintly haunted, compelled her to take his hand. Together, they slipped between shadows, unnoticed by the gang members distracted by rumors of her appearance. An alleyway offered temporary cover, its air thick with mold and dust. Lila pressed herself against the wall, regulating her breath while Cole scanned the street. "Why help me?" she asked softly. "Because helping you is right," he said. "And sometimes, right things don't come easily out here." The streets of Dustwater Creek stretched ahead, orange and harsh in the dying light. The wind carried dust and whispered secrets of the plains. Lila followed Cole through the alleys until the town's edge, where wooden buildings gave way to rocky outcroppings and sagebrush. Every step felt perilous, every shadow a potential threat. The satchel in her hands seemed heavier with each heartbeat. Cole mounted his horse with practiced ease and extended a hand. Lila climbed behind him, gripping tightly. The horse moved over uneven ground, kicking up dust that hung in the air like ghosts. The town shrank behind them, swallowed by shadows and distance. In that silence, a fragile trust formed. Fear mingled with hope, danger with purpose. "Where are we going?" she asked. "North," Cole replied, "near Bitter Creek Ridge. There, you'll be safe for now." Her grip on the satchel tightened. "And after that?" Cole's gaze was fixed on the horizon. "After that, we survive." Night crept in as the first stars appeared. Cole guided the horse through rolling hills, dried riverbeds, and jagged rocks. Lila felt every muscle ache but pushed through it, driven by the hope that survival was possible, that the outlaw beside her might be more than just a savior, perhaps a man seeking redemption. By midnight, they reached a narrow canyon, the walls rising high and obscuring the moonlight. Cole brought the horse to a halt and gestured for Lila to dismount. They crept along the rocky edges, each step deliberate, aware that Pike's gang could be anywhere. The stars above offered cold guidance, and Lila's thoughts drifted to her father, to the life she had known, now shattered. Fear mingled with trust, and uncertainty became a compass guiding her forward. At the canyon's edge lay Bitter Creek Ridge, jagged rocks, sparse trees, and the faint glimmer of a river below. Cole whispered, "Stay close. We're not out of danger yet, but we'll make it. You'll see." Shadows stirred in the distance, and the frontier whispered of threats yet unseen, tests yet unmeasured, and a destiny demanding courage, trust, and sacrifice beyond anything Lila had imagined. Somewhere in the darkness, Pike's eyes watched, waiting for the moment when the outlaw and the girl might falter, unaware that choices made tonight would echo far beyond Dustwater Creek, shaping lives, destinies, and the course of justice in the unforgiving West. The night pressed against them like a living thing, cold and unyielding. Bitter Creek Ridge stretched ahead, a jagged spine of rock and shadow, moonlight slicing through the gaps in the cliffs. Lila shivered, pressing the satchel to her chest, aware that every rustle in the brush could signal danger. Cole moved ahead, silent and watchful, a man molded by the wilderness and tempered by a life where one wrong step meant death. "You'll need to trust me fully now," he said, voice low but steady. "One mistake, one noise, and Pike's men will find us." Lila swallowed, nodding. Her hands were raw from gripping the leather satchel, but a new resolve was settling inside her. Fear was still there, gnawing, but now tempered by purpose. For the first time, she saw Cole not just as an outlaw, but as a guide, a protector, someone who understood survival in a world that gave nothing freely. The canyon walls rose steep and unforgiving. The path narrowed, forcing them to move in single file, each footfall deliberate. Rocks crumbled underweight, echoing down the hollow spaces. Lila forced herself to breathe slowly, matching Cole's calm rhythm. The air smelled of dust, pine, and something else, danger, raw and unrelenting. Hours passed. Coyotes howled in the distance, and the occasional crack of a branch set Lila's heart racing. Cole remained silent but vigilant, signaling with subtle gestures. A tilt of his head, the shift of his body, a small hand movement. Language without words, built over years of necessity. Lila began to understand, to anticipate, to move as if part of his shadow. They paused at a small alcove overlooking the river below. Lila crouched behind a jagged boulder, her hair falling across her face. Cole knelt beside her, inspecting the trail ahead. "They've spread out," he said, barely audible. "Pike's men are patrolling in small groups. They don't expect us to move at night." Her eyes widened. "And if they do," Cole's jaw tightened, "then we fight. But we won't give them the chance." The hours dragged, filled with tense silence and the slow rhythm of stealth. Lila learned to move quietly, to hold her breath as shadows shifted, and to read the subtle signs of the wilderness, the snap of a twig, the rustle of grass, the soft hiss of wind through rocks. She was learning to survive. She was learning to trust. Suddenly, a sound, low and guttural, echoed through the canyon. Lila froze, heart hammering. Cole crouched, scanning the ridge above. Two figures emerged, rifles catching moonlight. Scouts. Pike's men, no doubt sent to intercept them. Cole moved first, silently drawing his revolvers. "Stay down," he whispered. "I'll handle this." The first scout stepped closer, unaware of the shadows. Cole's movements were fluid and lethal. One shot rang out, precise and quiet. The man crumpled to the ground, his rifle clattering against stone. The second scout spun, eyes wide in shock, but Cole was faster. A kick, a sweep, and the second man fell, groaning, disarmed and incapacitated. Lila's pulse raced, but she forced herself to breathe, to watch and learn. She realized now that survival depended on more than courage. It depended on presence, awareness, and trust in the man beside her. "Keep moving," Cole whispered, and they pressed on. The canyon seemed endless, a maze of rock and shadow, yet every turn brought them closer to the stagecoach trail that would lead to safety. The first hints of dawn began to lighten the eastern horizon, turning the rocks golden and casting long, jagged shadows. By the time they reached a narrow ledge above the river, exhaustion pressed against them. Lila's legs ached, her back burned, yet the sight of the flowing water below filled her with a fragile hope. Cole gestured for her to stay low while he scouted the next section. Hours later, they paused near a cluster of pine trees, sheltering from the first weak rays of sunlight. Lila leaned against a tree, panting trying to calm the tremor in her body. Cole offered her water from a small canteen. "You're doing well," he said quietly. "More than you know. Keep this up, and we'll make it." She met his gaze, realizing that trust had begun to form, subtle but undeniable. Not through words, but through action, through shared hardship, through the knowledge that he had risked everything to save her. A silent understanding passed between them. In the wilderness, only those who adapted, learned, and relied on each other would survive. But danger was not gone. From the shadows, faint movement suggested they were being tracked. Lila's heart sank. Pike's gang was relentless, and even the most careful plans could unravel in an instant. Cole, sensing her fear, placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "We're almost at the trail," he said. "Stay with me. One step at a time." As they resumed the treacherous descent toward the stagecoach trail, a low whistle cut through the canyon air. A signal. More men were converging. Lila's breath caught, but she didn't panic. She had learned, in hours of terror and movement, that survival required courage tempered with careful calculation. The first real confrontation awaited. Gunfire, strategy, and instinct would determine if they reached safety or became another story whispered in the wind across Dustwater Creek. And in that canyon, beneath the moonlight and rising sun, trust, courage, and the shadow of the outlaw would be tested like never before. The frontier had drawn its lines, and Lila realized something profound. She was no longer just a girl running from danger. She was a survivor, a witness, and a participant in a story that would demand everything she had, and everything Cole was willing to give. Dawn broke over the canyon, spilling gold across jagged rocks and the slow-moving river below. Lila's muscles ached, her arms trembling from the long ride and hours of crouched stealth. But exhaustion was a luxury they could not afford. Ahead, through the thinning shadows of night, lay the gang's hideout, a ramshackle cabin perched on a bluff overlooking the river, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Inside, Pike and his men rifled through stolen goods, unaware that their prey had not only survived the night, but had an ally prepared to strike. Cole motioned for Lila to stay low behind a rock. The outlaw's eyes scanned every ridge, every tree, every inch of the terrain. His revolvers were drawn, polished, and ready. Lila's hands tightened on the satchel, her pulse echoing the rhythm of fear and adrenaline. She had been trained to follow instructions, to move quietly, but nothing could have prepared her for the terror of seeing the enemy so close, so alive, and so oblivious to their presence. "They'll spot us if we hesitate," Cole muttered. "Follow my lead and stay behind me." His voice was calm, unshakable, a steadying force amidst the storm of fear that gripped her. They advanced through the rocky undergrowth, shadows stretching with the morning light. The first scout emerged from behind the cabin, rifle slung carelessly across his shoulder. Cole moved like a shadow, silent and swift. One precise shot rang out, muffled by the canyon walls, and the scout crumpled into the dust. Lila's stomach twisted. This was no longer a game. This was survival, life or death, and she was a part of it. Another man appeared, startled by the sudden loss of his companion. Cole sidestepped and swept him with a calculated kick, sending him sprawling into the rocks. Lila froze at first, fear clenching her throat, but then she moved, following Cole's subtle hand signals. Each gesture was a lesson, each movement a step toward understanding the unspoken code of survival in the wilderness. She was learning, adapting, becoming part of a rhythm that dictated life and death. Gunfire cracked against stone as Cole engaged two more men simultaneously. The sounds were deafening, echoing off the canyon walls and making Lila flinch with every shot. Dust and sparks flew from ricochets, the morning sun glinting off metal. She ducked instinctively, heart hammering, clutching the satchel that contained the evidence of the gang's crimes. She realized now that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was the determination to act despite it. The gang leader, Pike, emerged, rifle raised, fury on his face. "Blackwood!" he roared, and chaos erupted. Cole advanced, revolvers spinning in a deadly dance, knocking rifles aside, deflecting blows, and keeping the enemy at bay. Lila's instincts kicked in. She moved to flank Pike, keeping herself low, aware that any misstep could be fatal. The cabin became a storm of violence. Men shouted, weapons fired, and the river below reflected the chaotic dance of survival. Cole's calculated precision contrasted with Pike's fury. Each shot fired was measured, each move deliberate. Lila followed, heart racing, clutching the satchel, learning the rhythm of action and fear. Suddenly, a gang member lunged from the side, knife glinting. Cole pivoted, catching the man with the butt of his revolver, sending him sprawling. Lila seized the moment, darting toward the cabin to retrieve documents and gold that proved Pike's crimes. The satchel became a lifeline, a symbol of the stakes at hand. Minutes stretched like hours. The canyon echoed with the chaos of gunfire, the hiss of ricochet, and the groans of the fallen. But Cole's presence, steady and unyielding, created a path through the madness. Lila ran beside him, moving with a confidence born of necessity, every step a testament to trust forged in the heat of danger. Finally, the tide turned. Pike's men faltered, realizing their control had slipped. One by one, they fled, scrambling down the canyon slopes toward the river, leaving behind the spoils of their theft. Pike himself made a desperate dash toward the river's edge, but Cole intercepted him, delivering a swift, precise strike that sent the outlaw tumbling into the shallow rapids below. Breathless and trembling, Lila lowered the satchel, the weight of the night's violence pressing on her chest. She met Cole's gaze, a silent acknowledgment passing between them. They had survived, not because of luck, but because of courage, trust, and the skills honed in the unforgiving frontier. Cole allowed himself a brief moment of relief, scanning the landscape for any lingering threats. "It's not over," he murmured. "But we've won the first battle." Lila nodded, realizing that this journey had changed her. Fear had been tempered by action, doubt replaced by trust, and helplessness transformed into survival. She had been forged by the canyon, by the shadows, by the gunfire, and she had endured. As the first rays of sunlight painted the canyon gold, they began the careful trek toward the stagecoach trail that would lead to safety. The river below whispered of freedom and peril in equal measure. Every step forward was a claim of victory, every breath a reminder that the frontier demanded courage, cunning, and unyielding determination. By the time they reached the trees lining the trail, exhaustion had set in, but the bond between Lila and Cole had strengthened into something unspoken yet undeniable, a shared understanding that survival, in the wild and brutal West, required more than courage. It required trust, skill, and the willingness to face danger together. And yet, shadows lingered. Pike's gang would not forgive so easily. The frontier was patient, and it remembered. Lila's heart knew that the next challenge would come, sharper and more perilous than the first. But she had changed. She was no longer simply running. She was fighting, learning, and becoming someone who could survive the unforgiving West, alongside the outlaw who had become more than a savior, perhaps even the first real friend she had ever known. The sun hung low over Dustwater Creek, casting long shadows across the boardwalks and fields. The town, still quiet from the previous night's chaos, seemed unaware that danger had brushed so close. Lila's hands trembled as she tightened her grip on the satchel, now heavy with documents and gold that proved Pike's crimes. The evidence was safe, the gang scattered, but the battle had left scars, physical, emotional, and unseen. Cole led her toward the sheriff's ranch, silent for most of the walk. The canyon behind them still echoed faintly with the memory of gunfire and the river's relentless rush. Lila's mind replayed every moment, the fear, the adrenaline, the lessons she had learned. Each step had carved a new sense of resilience into her, a determination that she had never possessed before. Sheriff Calhoun emerged from the ranch porch as they approached, his eyes widening at the sight of his daughter, safe but visibly shaken. Relief and disbelief fought across his face, emotions too large for words. He took a step forward, then hesitated, studying Cole with a mix of suspicion and gratitude. "You saved her," the sheriff said finally, his voice taut with emotion. "Ow!" Cole tipped his hat, keeping his expression guarded. "Some debts aren't about money," he said quietly. "Some debts are about doing what's right." Lila stepped forward, her satchel still clutched to her chest. She looked at Cole with a new understanding, a recognition that went beyond fear or gratitude. "Some outlaws can be heroes," she said softly. Her voice carried the weight of everything they had endured: the nights in the canyon, the gunfire, the danger, and the trust that had formed in those crucibles of survival. Calhoun studied them both, the lines in his weathered face deepening. He understood that law could protect only so far. Beyond that lay courage, instinct, and the rare grace of someone willing to act when others could not. Cole had risked everything, and in doing so had proven a truth the frontier often hid. Honor could exist even where law faltered. The town slowly began to stir, unaware that justice had been restored in the shadows of the canyon. Lila, exhausted but resolute, placed the satchel in her father's hands. "Everything he's done. It's all here," she said. "All the proof you need." Cole remained at a distance, his silhouette framed by the rising sun. Lila felt a pang of conflict, relief that they had survived, sorrow that the journey was ending, and gratitude for the man who had become her protector, mentor, and friend. He had entered her life as a shadow, a mysterious figure whose motives were hidden, and had emerged as someone who had irrevocably changed her understanding of trust, courage, and survival. The sheriff approached Cole cautiously. "You could stay," he said. "Help me rebuild the town, protect it from men like Pike." Cole shook his head. "My place isn't here," he said. "The frontier is wide, and I have debts to settle, debts only I can face. But know this, I'll always watch from the shadows, and I'll never forget this town or the girl who taught me what courage looks like." Lila's eyes glimmered with unshed tears. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. Her voice carried the weight of their shared trials and the acknowledgement of a bond forged in adversity and danger. Cole tipped his hat one final time and walked toward the horizon, fading into the golden light of the rising sun. The town remained behind him, safe for now, but the frontier stretched endlessly before him, a world of danger, opportunity, and redemption waiting to be claimed by those bold enough to walk its wild paths. Lila turned to her father, the satchel in his hands a tangible symbol of survival and justice. "We're stronger than we knew," she said. "And the frontier, it's not just about law. It's about courage, trust, and choices that define us." Sheriff Calhoun nodded, pulling her into a firm embrace. "You've proven that tonight," he said. "Both of you." As they stood there, the town awakening behind them, Lila realized that her life had irrevocably changed. Fear had given way to resilience. Doubt had been tempered by trust. And in the face of violence, uncertainty, and danger, she had discovered the strength to survive, and the rare truth that even the most unlikely allies could become heroes. The camera would hold on the trio, Lila, Calhoun, and the distant figure of Cole disappearing into the plains. The sun glinted off the river, the rocks, and the town, symbolizing hope, endurance, and the fragile beauty of life on the frontier. In every shadow of the West, choices define us. Courage is forged in danger, and sometimes it takes the unlikeliest heroes to remind us that honor survives even in the wildest lands. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience with the echo of wind, river, and the enduring spirit of the frontier, a story of danger, trust, redemption, and bittersweet victory.